When I got the wedding invitation, I smiled until I read the part where they politely suggested I reconsider attending if financial constraints would make things awkward. I thought it was a typo. It wasn't. I'm Monica, born and raised in Indiana, middle child. The quiet one, according to everyone. Until you mess with me, I work a regular job, live within my means, and mind my business. But the one time I decided to step into family events again, I got slapped in the face with the kind of snobbery that makes your blood boil. My sister Rachel and I grew up close. Real close. We shared bunk beds, secrets, and dreams about the future. But when we got older, things changed. Rachel got into a fancy college, met her now husband Derek, and started calling herself Rachel Elise, like she was on the cover of Vogue. Still, I was proud of her. I thought she'd outgrown her teenage insecurities, not buried herself in them. The wedding invitation arrived in a thick, cream-colored envelope, like the kind that feels expensive before you even open it. I was excited. Honestly, until I read the note tucked inside. It wasn't even handwritten, just a printed insert that said, "To ensure the best guest experience, we kindly request that attendees contribute a minimum wedding gift of $500 or more. If this poses a financial hardship, we understand and appreciate your well wishes from afar." I had to read it 3 times. My heart dropped. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because they thought I couldn't. That note wasn't for their rich friends. That note was for me. I called my mom first, thinking she'd be just as shocked. "Oh, honey," she said, "don't make a scene. Derek just wants to keep things classy." Classy? Since when did classy mean excluding people you supposedly love? I bit my tongue, but that conversation left a bitter taste in my mouth. And it got worse. A week later, I was invited to Rachel's bridal shower. I showed up with a gift basket, handmade, thoughtful, curated just for her. A mix of nostalgia and love. Old pictures, her favorite snacks, a monogrammed robe. I thought she'd smile. I thought she'd hug me. Instead, Derek looked me up and down and muttered, "Cute." Very. Etsy.com Etsy. Like it was a curse word. Rachel smiled awkwardly and mumbled something about how they were registered at Pottery Barn and Williams-Sonoma. I felt like I was shrinking, like I didn't belong. And just when I thought it couldn't get more uncomfortable, Derek pulled me aside. I thought he was going to apologize. Maybe explain that the registry thing was just for formality. But no. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Monica, I know you're trying. But this wedding? It's not really your scene. Rachel doesn't want to say it, but we both agree. It might be best if you just skip the big day. No hard feelings. No hard feelings." That moment was a punch to the gut. I was too stunned to speak. I didn't cry, not right away. I just left. I sat in my car in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I could feel every ounce of dignity draining from me. Then something snapped. I wasn't angry they thought I was poor. I was angry they thought they could define me by a price tag. You want classy? Fine. You want expensive? Bet. I spent the next few days going through some boxes I hadn't touched in years. Not a lot of people in my family know that I've been running a successful online business for the past 8 years. Not flashy, not public, but profitable. Very profitable. I design and license digital patterns, graphics, textiles, and fonts. Big companies pay me royalties every single month. I don't flaunt it. I don't post it. But I'm doing just fine. And I realized something. I wasn't poor. I was just private. So I made a decision. I was going to the wedding. And I was bringing a gift. But not just any gift. See, they expected cash. They expected me to feel ashamed. Instead, I gave them something that no one, not one person, saw coming. And when I handed it to them in front of everyone, the room fell silent. Dead. Silent. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I kept my mouth shut. No texts, no calls, no dramatic rants on social media. I played it cool. That's what they wanted, right? For me to disappear quietly, to stay in my place? They had no idea they'd lit a fire under someone who doesn't do public drama, but does private revenge with precision. The wedding was set at a high-end vineyard in Napa Valley. Swans in the pond, violins playing at the gate, a literal champagne fountain. I arrived in an understated black dress, hair up, nothing flashy, just clean and confident. My presence alone seemed to confuse everyone. I caught glimpses of Rachel whispering to her bridesmaids. Derek did a double take like he'd seen a ghost. I smiled. I mingled. I made small talk. I ignored the side eyes from distant cousins and that one aunt who always asks if I'm still doing that art thing. And then came gift time. Now, Derek's side of the family made a show of gift giving. Cards with $1,000 checks. One couple even gifted them a honeymoon experience package that came with a full PowerPoint presentation on a rented screen. It was a whole performance. When it was my turn, I didn't say a word. I simply walked up with a slim black envelope. No ribbon, no glitter, just clean lines and confidence. I handed it to them and said, "Congratulations." Rachel looked nervous. Derek looked amused. He opened it immediately, expecting... What? A $50 Target card. Instead, he pulled out a single sheet of paper. His face changed. Quickly. Rachel leaned in to read. Silence. She blinked twice, her lips parted, but nothing came out. Then she read it again. The paper detailed a legal transfer of ownership. I had purchased, and was gifting them, the down payment for their dream house. But not just any down payment. A $75,000 certified check made out to their future mortgage lender, already pre-approved, with my business's LLC as the donor. Not a cent of debt tied to it. No strings, no drama. Just done. The room was dead silent. You could hear the air conditioning. Derek looked up at me like he'd just seen a completely different person. I leaned in and whispered, "Don't worry. I can afford to make people uncomfortable." And I walked away. It took a full minute before the whispers started. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Not the happy kind, not the kind you expect from a bride. She looked ashamed, but also stunned, like her entire image of me had been shattered in real time. I don't think Derek even knew how to blink. The rest of the reception was awkward. For them, not for me. I danced. I sipped champagne. I laughed with the bartender. One of Derek's uncles even came up to me and said, "I think you just became a legend in this family." Damn right I did. But let's rewind a little, because there's something even crazier about this story. Rachel and I weren't always this distant. In fact, there was a time when she looked up to me, when she used to ask me for advice on literally everything: college applications, internships, even what to wear on her first date with Derek. So what happened? I think somewhere along the way she got caught up in this idea that success only looked one way. Degrees, titles, country clubs. She forgot that success could also look like freedom, creativity, and building something out of nothing. She forgot who I was. But that wedding gift? That was just the beginning of the lesson. Because a week after the wedding, I got a call from Rachel. She was crying. Not fake crying, not guilt-tripping crying. Real gutted, humbling crying. She said, "I didn't know. I had no idea what you'd built. I was so wrong about you, and I let him treat you like you were nothing." I stayed quiet. I let the silence sit. Then I said, "You didn't let him treat me like nothing. You helped him do it." That was the truth. She sobbed harder. Then she asked the question I didn't expect. Can we Start over? It hit me hard. Because the thing is, I didn't want revenge. Not really. I just wanted respect. I wanted her to see me, not the filtered, polite version, but me. The woman who stayed up till 2 a.m. building a business. The woman who never asked for handouts, never posted her wins for clout, and never forgot where she came from. And maybe, just maybe, she was finally starting to see that. The funny thing about silence, sometimes it's louder than any argument. After that call with Rachel, the line between us didn't magically heal. It just stopped bleeding. For the first time in years, she wasn't talking at me. She was actually listening. And maybe realizing how far she'd drifted. Over the next few weeks, we talked more. Slowly, cautiously. Not about the wedding. Not even about the gift. We talked about our childhood, about Mom's weird obsession with labeling leftovers, and how we used to pretend we were fashion designers using old pillowcases as fabric. She told me she missed that version of us. And you know what? I did too. But one person wasn't thrilled by our reconnection. Derek. He started showing up on calls, hovering in the background, interrupting, making passive-aggressive jokes like, "Hope Monica's not trying to guilt you into anything," or, "Just remember who's been there through the real stuff." I didn't bite. I let it slide. But it was obvious. He didn't just dislike me. He felt threatened by me. Because his version of the story, the one where I was broke, irrelevant, and out of touch, was unraveling fast. And he couldn't stand it. It all came to a head one Sunday afternoon. Rachel invited me over for brunch. "Just the two of us," she said. I showed up with fresh croissants and a bottle of wine. She smiled and hugged me at the door, then immediately looked over her shoulder, nervous. That's when I realized it. Derek was home. And this wasn't brunch. This was an ambush. The moment I stepped into their overpriced kitchen, I felt the tension. Derek leaned against the counter, arms crossed, that smug smile back on his face. "Glad you could make it," he said. "We figured we should clear the air." I raised an eyebrow. "About what? The fact that you tried to disinvite me from your own wedding? Or that you've been feeding my sister lies about who I am for years?" Rachel looked panicked. "Can we just talk? Please?" I sighed and sat down. That's when Derek pulled out his envelope. He said, "Look, we appreciate what you did. It was generous. But you can't just throw money at a situation and expect to be forgiven. It felt manipulative, like you were trying to embarrass us." I actually laughed. "Embarrass you? Derek, you told me I was too poor to be seen at your wedding. You tried to erase me from my own sister's life. And now, when that image you created doesn't match reality, suddenly I'm the one being manipulative?" He wasn't used to that. Someone calling out his behavior without yelling, without tears. Just calm, razor-sharp honesty. He doubled down. "You don't understand what it's like to build a life from scratch. We've had to sacrifice a lot to get here." That part almost made me spit out my mimosa. "You think I don't know about sacrifice?" I said. "Derek, while you were flexing your leased BMW and pretending a Pottery Barn registry made you a man, I was working 70-hour weeks building a business from my bedroom with nothing but a $200 laptop and Wi-Fi that barely worked." He opened his mouth, but I kept going. "You didn't embarrass me, Derek. You embarrassed yourself. You were so busy trying to gatekeep your wedding from the poor sister, you didn't realize I was the most successful person in that room." Rachel sat frozen, silent, and that's when I turned to her. "Rachel, I love you. I always have. But if you're going to stay married to a man who thinks respect is measured in bank accounts and brand names, you're going to lose more than just me. You're going to lose yourself." She cried again. This time, not out of guilt, but maybe out of clarity. I left without another word. No dramatic exits, no slamming doors, just peace. Because I didn't come to be part of their illusion. I came to remind them who I really was, and to let them decide if they could handle that. A few days later, I got a message. From Derek. It was short. You win. But here's the thing. I wasn't playing a game. This wasn't about winning. It was about reclaiming a part of me they tried to erase. And that gift I gave them wasn't just money. It was a mirror to show them who I really was. And they weren't ready. But now they had no choice but to see it. After Derek sent that message, you win. I didn't reply. What could I even say? That this wasn't a contest? That there was no scoreboard? He'd already exposed what kind of man he was. Insecure, performative, and terrified of someone like me. Someone who didn't need to brag to be powerful. But the real surprise came a month later. Rachel showed up at my apartment. No warning. No call. Just knocked on my door on a Tuesday morning while I was making coffee in leggings and a hoodie. I opened the door, and there she was. No makeup. Puffy eyes. And in her hand, a duffel bag. I blinked. Rachel, I left him, she said. Just like that. I stepped aside, and she walked in like she'd been holding her breath for years, and finally let it out. We sat on my couch for hours, talking, crying, laughing in those weird, broken ways people do when they realize they've been living someone else's version of life for too long. She told me that after the wedding, she started seeing it. How Derek constantly tried to mold her, how he made her feel like she had to curate every part of herself, even down to who she invited into her life. That included me. She admitted she'd been afraid of being seen as less than, especially after marrying into his world. But watching me walk into that wedding, not only unapologetic, but generous, powerful, real, shook her. I forgot who I was, she said. And you reminded me. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw her mistakes in her face. I just hugged her. Because finally, she saw me not just as her sister, but as her equal. Scratch that. Her example. She stayed with me for a week while she sorted her life out. Got a lawyer. Filed the paperwork. Turns out, their marriage wasn't just emotionally toxic. It was financially messy, too. She had no clue how bad Derek had been with money. No investments, maxed out credit cards, and a lease on that flex car he kept flaunting. It was 90 days behind. He wasn't protecting her. He was using her to protect his image. When she told me that, I asked, "Do you need help?" She looked me in the eye and said, "No. I need to rebuild, and I want to do it right this time." Proud isn't even the word, so I helped her, not with a check, but with knowledge. We sat down every night after dinner. I showed her how to build a budget, how to start investing, how to launch her own Etsy shop for personalized home decor, something she'd always dreamed of, but never thought she was good enough to try. Now, she's thriving, not overnight, not with magic, but with intention, humility, and grit. And here's the twist no one saw coming, the wedding gift that left everyone silent. Rachel and I agreed to return it. She called the lender and said the funds were being withdrawn. I had the check voided and issued instead to a small women's shelter in our hometown that was on the verge of shutting down. We did it together. And when I handed that new check over to the shelter director, I realized something. Respect isn't about what you give someone to impress them. It's what you do when nobody's watching, what you build when no one believes in you, what you reclaim when people try to write you off. That gift wasn't just a flex. It was a test. One Derek failed miserably, and Rachel passed eventually. And now? Now I don't care if I ever get invited to another fancy wedding again, because I've got something far better than chandeliers and champagne fountains. I've got my self-worth, I've got my sister back, and I've got peace. So if you're ever told you're too poor to belong somewhere, smile. Show up anyway. And when it's time, remind them that real wealth doesn't need an invitation. It walks in anyway and leaves the room silent.